Hi, my name is Alexis Williams. I'm the Associate Artistic Director here at the Playwrights Realm. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us in this community conversation, tackling questions around grad school. And thanks, Chelsea, for all of that amazing housekeeping. Yeah, I mean, of course, one thing I do want to say up front is, of course, there are many routes into theater, into playwriting. There are many amazing writers, amazing folks who work in theater who did not go to grad school. I actually did not go to grad school. And there are many amazing playwrights and folks in the theater who did. And I know this is a question a lot of people are constantly thinking about, that debate around to grad school or not to grad school, and just wanting to engage with folks who, have had that experience. So, and particularly as application season is basically upon us, and we have had a few requests to sort of hear more about the grad experience, we wanted to create this space for a conversation around it, and to hear from some wonderful writers who have been to grad school, who I will introduce very shortly, just to allow folks to address that and to allow them to share their experiences. So just to give you a little sense of the evening, we're gonna chat for a bit. Then we're going to open up for questions from you. There is the Q&A feature at the bottom, so you'll be able to use that to enter your questions, and then we can get to as many questions as we can get to, and it'll be a great time. We are recording this for posterity, and just if there are folks who weren't able to make it tonight but still would be interested in this conversation, so if there are any questions you have or things you want us to share anonymously, that's absolutely fine. I feel like that's enough of my preamble and me talking. Wonderful panelist playwrights, do you want to unmute yourselves and turn your cameras on, and then I can introduce you? Great. So in this world and on our panel, we have, and maybe just kind of wave when I say your name, Miranda Rose Hall, who went to Yale School of Drama. She graduated in 2017. We've got Tanya Everett, alum of Brooklyn College, class of 2019. Jordan Ramirez, Puckett, Ohio University, 2020. And Keiko Green, who is currently at UCSD, graduating in 2022. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's so great to have you all. Yeah, I feel like, to open it up, I would just love to have each of you, talk about yourselves for a bit, just tell everybody who you are, what has led you on your path. Let's start with Miranda. Do you want to start?
Sure. So I'm Miranda, and I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and I didn't realize that playwrights could be alive until I went to college. So it's like a huge revelation for me. I was a poet and performer primarily going into college, and then I discovered playwriting. And by the end of college, I had this real hunch that I would want to try to make a life as a playwright. But in college, I didn't really know many playwrights. There wasn't a lot of playwriting. There weren't playwriting classes. So it was this thing that I sort of felt like I was like bumping around in the dark trying to figure out. And I came to grad school after a couple years of social service work in the Pacific Northwest. So I was out in Alaska and Montana doing like social service work, wondering how to be a playwright. So that's sort of my like weird journey into grad school.
Amazing. Tanya.
Hi, Tanya Everett, she, her, hers. I am based in Brooklyn, and I also was an actor coming into this. So I started writing a long time ago, but went to a very intense college. I went to Columbia undergrad, and being at Columbia was really like uninspiring as a writer, as a young writer. I was like, this just the lanes were very competitive. And so it took me a while to like come back to writing, to believing I was a writer. And 2011, I did a workshop with the Labyrinth Theater Company, and Steve and Natalie Girgis did some improv with us, and so I wrote a full-length play and sort of like got back on track with writing. And I did a fellowship with this theater company called the Amoralists, and all of those people in the fellowship, including Stacey Rose, who's an incredible playwright. If you don't know her, look her up. She's amazing. And killing it. Stacey Rose and everyone in the fellowship, except for moi, had a grad degree, except for me. And so I was like, well, everyone has a grad degree except for me. I'm in this fellowship. We're all on the same page. What am I not doing? You know? So I applied to Brooklyn and a couple other schools. And Brooklyn was like, A, you have money. And B, there's a showcase at the Public. And I was like, say less. So yeah, my sort of introduction to graduate school was sort of looking around and being like, what do I need to sharpen my toolkit? And also was already in Brooklyn. So, you know, those are some of the many reasons that I ended up there. It's good to be here.
Great, amazing. Jordan.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jordan. I am in the Bay Area. I'm Bay Area native, and I'm back here. Very happy to be. I did my undergrad at Northwestern, and I started off as actually, I started off as a stats major before moving to theater, and I was a stage manager, and then I fell in love with lighting design, and I finally took a playwriting course. And after I graduated from there, I started as an intern at the San Francisco Playhouse and kind of worked my way up to becoming associate artistic director. And I did every job under the sun there. I did box office, bar, front of house, like accounts, accounts receivable. I did everything, and I really loved it for the time that I was there, but it wasn't super sustainable. And I felt like rather than doing everything that you can do in a theater department, I wanted to kind of have the chance to focus and focus on my writing. And so that's sort of when I decided to make the transition to grad school. So yeah, that's me.
Amazing. And Keiko.
Hi, I'm Keiko. I was born and raised in Georgia, and yeah, I'm a Southern gal. And then I got my undergrad in at NYU in New York, and the experimental theater wing, where we got a little taste of writing. But it was it is an acting studio technically. So a lot of great creators come out of there. And then New York was very expensive, so I moved. I checked out the West Coast. So I actually moved to Seattle and lived there for quite a few years. And I worked there as a regional theater actor. And so I definitely also am from the actor side in. Wasn't quite seeing, especially at first, wasn't quite seeing the kind of work that I wanted to do. Which got me kind of writing, and I started writing lots of 10-minute plays, which led to longer plays done by tiny little theater companies with a shoestring budget, or like I made one set by myself out of cardboard. Truly guerrilla theater. And then it was, I got a residency through a theater there that kind of sent me off into being like, oh, this is actually something that I could pursue. And so I'm coming to grad school. This is my second year. I am at UCSD down here in San Diego, and I'm coming here a little bit older than some of my classmates. So if that's something that any of you have questions about, also, I came down here with a husband, and that's partially why I chose the place that I did. So I myself had a lot of questions about grad school that I think something like this would have been really helpful when I was considering or applying. So I'm really excited to be here and answer any questions that people might have.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Well, and all of you have sort of in your preambles and introductions answered my first question a bit of like what made you decide to apply to grad school. But I think my next question would be of the things that you were hoping to gain from it. And I know it's tricky because some of you are still there now and others are out a couple of years, but of the things that you were hoping to gain from grad school, like do you feel like you gained those? Were there things that you were hoping to gain more of, or that just surprised you in your experience there? I was going to say whoever wants to go first, but I can call on you. Let's start with Jordan.
All right, great. Yeah, so when I went to grad school, I sort of felt like I might want to kind of transition. And so I really wanted a grad school that would give me the opportunity to teach, because I wanted to see if that was for me. And I really wanted a grad program that was going to let me study abroad, because I never got to do that when I was an undergrad. And I was like, now's my chance. And I wanted to be able to take classes outside of theater for free. And actually not just for free, but to get paid to do it, because I wanted to go to a fully funded program. And so those are things that I was able to do. I found out I hate teaching, which was a really valuable experience. I got to go to Ecuador for a semester, which was amazing. And the funny thing is I left my job where I was essentially the literary manager of a theater company, thinking I wanted to just focus on my own writing for 3 years. And I feel so lucky I got the chance to do it. And I got paid to be a writer for 3 years. But I found out, what I love the most is I love supporting other writers in my program. I loved giving feedback to other writers. I love getting feedback. And it just kind of reaffirmed that, I think where I want to be actually is in a theater's literary department. So it was useful for that. But also just, the experience of, studying abroad was amazing. And I'm happy to dive into that if people are interested, but I'll just stop there for now.
Miranda.
Well, I really wanted to make friends and meet playwrights. Like I didn't have like a ton of friends who were even trying to do what I thought I wanted to do. So I wanted friends and teachers. And I think that there are absolutely things that one can be taught about playwriting. And it's this balance between being able to teach like tangible techniques and just giving somebody the chance to explore their voice and their interests. And so I thought I was going to grad school so that I could like make friends and like be a better writer, and that happened. But I didn't realize that how valuable it would be to just practice being an artist in rehearsal and have a chance to like practice what my rhythm of rewrites in a rehearsal is, or how I talk to actors, or how I talk to directors, or to sit in on other people's rehearsals. And this sounds so stupid, but it was like so significant to me, like even just like looking at what people wore and like the way that they like chit-chatted over coffee. I like had to learn how to take a meeting with somebody and learn how I felt comfortable presenting myself and expressing myself. So that I wasn't really even aware that those were things that I would be so hungry to learn, that I did learn. And I had the chance to I wrote like a lot of plays in a couple of years, and I had a chance to practice in like 5 production experiences. And it was just it felt like throwing a lot of paint on the wall. And I didn't going in, I didn't feel that I had like a deep body of work. And coming out, I felt like I had something that I could kind of stand up and say, like, here's my writing. I also had no idea about like development, like the industry was like very new to me. So I learned a lot about the industry too.
Amazing. Tanya?
I think going in, I didn't really know what I wanted necessarily. I wanted structure. I'm very much a person that likes structure in school, and I'd been applying to graduate school for acting for years. And I actually, Keiko, we should talk, because I got into UCSD. I got called back to UCSD, but I didn't get in that year. And I was like crushed. I was like super hurt. And I was like, okay, well, it's not meant to be, So, but I got into new school. That was a couple of years before I ended up going to grad school. And I ended up doing neither of any of those programs, and did an acting program. I did Maggie Flanagan Studios. So that was when I was acting and full time. And then I was like applying to school for so many years. Like I was applying to graduate school for so many years, and just being like, crap, am I ever going to go? So I think I went in, after that fellowship that I got, thinking, I just need a structure, I just need to like feel like there are deadlines and there is a community of writers around me that I'm accountable to, which was really great. I also didn't know, so I love that you all are on this panel, because I didn't know that much about graduate school at the time. Like I just applied to the ones that sounded good, It was like, well, I'll go to, these are the ones everyone goes to. So like, I'll go to these, So I would say that doing research around what kind of playwrights come out of these programs, or what kind of playwrights, they want to foster, I think is really valuable. Brooklyn is a very experimental program. Mac Wellman is who founded it, and who I studied with. Mac Wellman and Aaron Courtney have now left Brooklyn College, so I can tell you more about that, but I can't tell you that much more because they left right after I left. So I was the last class of the founding, especially Mac Wellman, who founded the program. So that's a specific experience. And I also feel like the question is what I got out of it. I feel like I came out of it with a good amount of plays. Like I worked a lot, I wrote a lot. I was able to put a showcase up at the public. So that was my first production of like of anything more full length. And I also have a community of writers that that I'm connected to. I feel like I was able to meet industry both through Brooklyn and also because I'd gone to Brooklyn. And so I was very hungry around that, which is very specific to me. And I was like, okay, who do you know? But also who is going to talk to me, and it was much easier to get meetings with literary managers because I had gone to Brooklyn College. It didn't do much for my TV career, I will say. Like I am now doing TV, and it's not because of Brooklyn College. Like I love them so much. But they did try to help me. They did send my plays out. But it was other connections that ultimately got me there, and Playwrights Realm. So yeah, I think it's structure, it's building community. And it's, I do think it's sharpening your craft. It's also like expanding, for me, it was expanding my idea of what a play is, and really sort of fleshing out, what are the bounds of play writing? What does it actually mean to be writing a play now, right? Like as opposed to 6 months ago, as opposed to 15 years ago. And how like living, breathing organism of playwriting is really in our hands. So those are some of the concrete things I got.
Amazing, I love it. And Keiko.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still here. I'm still getting stuff out of it. Yeah, for me, it seems like a lot of us actually here, which is interesting. I didn't study playwriting in undergrad. There are plenty of people that study playwriting in undergrad that get their MFA. So I just kind of felt like there was something I was missing in my writing. Like I just didn't understand the basics maybe. And so there's that element of it. I definitely feel like I'm getting better at talking about plays, not just like I liked this, I didn't like this, but more, what are the tactics the playwright is using to successfully blah blah blah. Like that's something, and I'm getting better at talking about my own plays in that way too. Because yeah. And another thing I think is I think Miranda had mentioned this too, is just like getting just the amount of writing that you get to get done. Again, like coming from working, our work, our plays end up being written, in these in-between times, or like if you can have, like after a day of work on your gig or your side gig or whatever it is, and you're exhausted, like, and you want to come home, and the last thing you want to do, even though you love it, is like sit down and write because you're just exhausted, and so for me, grad school, and I specifically chose a program that does have a lighter course load, to be honest. But it does, it just gives me that time, like Jordan was saying, truly like paying me to write plays, which I had no idea that grad school could feel like that. Another thing that I was hoping for, what was specifically, industry connections and a bit of a kind of wink at TV and film for sure. I think, everybody from here probably knows, but a lot of the TV now is written by playwrights. And so I was definitely looking for a little bit of a sideways, a little bit more information, and also, what kind of like industry connections like we could possibly make. And for that, I think the proximity to LA here in San Diego, that has been useful. And I do think specifically during these COVID times, that being actually like a pretty big part of our program now here, has been a nice adjustment that we can kind of make, because when theater feels a little uncertain, so we can continue with our plays and also have our eye on this other prize at the same time. So that's been helpful.
Amazing, thank you. And got a couple more questions before I'm going to open it up to the community. So get ready for it. But I guess on the flip side of like the things that you were hoping to gain and that you did gain, and Tanya, you sort of touched on this with like, film and TV with them, not so much. But like, were there things that either in your craft or in your career or you thought, oh, going to grad school will result in this, or will help this long, where you were disappointed, where you were disappointed in it, or where it didn't quite fulfill what you were hoping for? Yeah, Tanya, go.
I'll start. I mean, I think at least I'll just speak to my experience, right? Because I don't know what other schools are like. I would say that Brooklyn is an incredible program. Like I love them. I love the people that I worked with. And it was very scrappy. So it was not like you get a showcase and you get an agent. Like that was not at all going to be the like path I was on. Though people did come out, like I can't remember, a couple agencies did send their people to the public, but it was because of like real hard work on my part. It was really like networking my ass off, like just sending many follow-up emails and asking every single person I knew and people I didn't know for referrals. So in that way, I wasn't able to like sit on my laurels and be like, cool, I'm going to grad school and they're gonna like hook me up. So I definitely feel like the program that I went to was very like beautiful in the craft space and beautiful in the like community space and beautiful in the like who do you want to be as an artist space, but somewhat not as like structurally sound for this is what it looks like for you to like work in the world, you know. And you know, while there were opportunities for me to like apply for things that other people wouldn't, and you know, those kinds of things that were specifically, you know, geared towards me and my class, my work ethic was how I ended up like coming out with like grounded and having the things that I needed. So yeah, I think that I assumed that going to graduate school was going to be like, I was going to come up with an agent and like a production and like, I don't know, lights. And that was not my experience. But also it was a conduit for conversations that probably wouldn't have happened without graduate school. So I guess the summation of that is just, I didn't feel like I could rely on the graduate school to do it for me. And I could ask for assistance and they would do everything that they could. And I had to meet them 89% of the way, you know? So yeah, I would say that don't come in with the assumption in any program, even the best program, that the program itself is going to do the work that you have to do.
I love that you just said that, and I would love to hear other people's thoughts too. And just to chime in, as I think everybody who is a panelist know, and other people might know, I used to be an agent, a literary agent. And actually, Tanya, one of the things you were saying around Brooklyn was one of my things that I would sort of say to potential clients too, because I feel like that also can be true of many things of the land. You know, nobody's going to take as much ownership of your career as you know, like you should still be like out there and promoting your work and telling people about it. Like, don't just sit back and, you know, assume other folks are doing that for you. So I think that can be true of many spheres. Anyone else have things or thoughts around, I was hoping to get this? Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I'll go. Yeah, I had a, you know, I think that a lot of the schools right now, you know, to be quite frank, a lot of schools right now are going through money issues. And even the fully funded programs, I think that they're just asking what people in the past have had, like the resources that they have had. That's not necessarily going to be the same for you. And so, you know, I have had to, you know, fight for some stuff. You know, for my school, the free tuition was fine, and the stipend, a monthly stipend like that was fine, but it was additional like travel stipends, things like that might not be the same for you as at my school, at least, as it has been for people in the past. Or like if people are, you know, there was a really juicy kind of thing that at our school, where people were receiving like giant like a $5,000 commission right out of school or something, you know, everybody was and you know, talking to the students, they don't know that ends a certain year, and so that they know like that money is gone. So I think that there's certain things with money, you know, it's like no one wants to talk about money, but you really have to talk about money when you're applying. And once you're coming down to it, just make crystal clear with the people that actually do know that information, what the deal is. And my one other kind of thing that is that was like a little bit surprising in a more negative way for me. Our school at UCSD, we do create a lot of material. We're not developing in the same way that I would wish that we did sometimes. So any kind of workshopping of plays, I really have to kind of do that by gathering people on my own. But it really feels like where, you know, there's like a draft and I can hear it with real actors. I feel like I can write and then that'll be in production, but I'm not getting a group of actors in a week, you know, for a whole week in a room where we can just talk about it. that's not something that is really part of the school, which I was actually a little bit surprised by. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to echo like everything that's been said, I think has been my experience. I also want to add, like, my experience was I had the most power to negotiate when I had gotten an acceptance, but before I had accepted my position. So I was able to negotiate a certain stipend because I essentially said, I'm not going without this stipend. And I wasn't asking for an insane amount. I was just asking for like the same level that people had gotten before me. But I just want to like kind of throw that out there that like, I think I had also applied for many years to get into grad school. And so when I finally did, the instinct was just like take the offer. And I think I really benefited by being like, no, I'm not just going to take this offer. Now is the time to like evaluate what I need and what would make it worth it for me to quit my job and move on to this chapter and to not settle for less. So just, I wanted to like say that really quickly. And then the other thing that I wanted to add about my experience was, I think this is maybe specific to being in nowhere, Ohio, that the acting pool that I got to work with was what it was. And in some ways it was amazing. I wrote one of my favorite plays I've written. I wrote specifically for an actor who's Filipino and he never got to play actually a Filipino character. And so I wrote him a play, and that continues to be one of my favorite collaborations and one of my favorite plays and favorite characters I've written. But at the same time, as Alexis knows, when I went to work on this other play, Pajarita, I needed a 50-year-old Latina woman. And that just wasn't an actor I was going to find in rural Ohio. And so I'm so grateful to the Playwrights Realm that I was able to have that experience of working on that play with the Scratchpad series. But I think similar to what everyone's been saying is I really had to make the grad experience work for me and sometimes go outside of my grad program to find what I needed to support the work. So yeah, I guess just going in with sort of open eyes about that they're not always going to be able to provide the resources, unfortunately, to work on the kind of work you want to be making if you're like me and you write really culturally specific pieces. So yeah.
Amazing. We have Miranda. Do you have anything you want to add, or feel like they've said it all?
I think I'll add one. I want to add that I applied to grad school a couple years in a row. A lot of the people in my program also applied multiple times. That is so normal. And I think that I didn't realize how tired I would be by the end of grad school, and what a kind of strange transition it would be going from a highly structured program into the totally unstructured territory of just trying to be a freelance artist in the world. And there's a kind of funky transition if you've been in really tight communication with teachers, with a cohort, you kind of start to form a certain kind of identity within a school environment, and then you leave, and at least I felt there was a kind of adjustment period where I was trying to discern who I am on my own terms and how I write on my own terms outside of a classroom or academic environment. And that could just be my personality. But yeah, there is a little bit of the wilderness after years of support and structure.
Great. One more, and then I'm going to the chat and the Q&As. And this one's actually for Keiko and Jordan, since I feel like it's sort of impossible to talk about anything without talking about like the world we are in the pandemic. So as two humans who, had their graduation kind of affected by COVID, or who are, in school right now during this, like, how was that? Yeah, just thoughts around just that experience. Whoever wants to take it first.
Yeah, I'll go first just because I have graduated now, but so at OU, you are, it's not guaranteed, but it's essentially almost everyone gets a thesis production their last semester. And I was so excited to have the opportunity to be in a rehearsal room for 6 weeks and to working with designers is one of my favorite things, given my background as a designer. And we got about a week of rehearsal before it was all shut down, and I lost, as so many people, I mean, so many theater people have lost productions, but I lost my thesis production. And basically what had happened is I came back to California for what I thought was spring break, and then just never got to go back to Ohio. So I never said goodbye to my friends. I never said goodbye to, like, in person to anyone. And I'm still, I think, mourning the loss of that. I will say, and I'll stop here, talking to my friends who are still at the program at OU, they're trying to figure out, I think as everyone is, like, how to do a virtual production. And it's not the same, but I think the people who are in their third year now are at least getting a rehearsal process in a way that, because it was so new, I just lost out on all of that. So I think even though COVID is still very much with us, some programs are figuring out how to adjust. But yeah, it was really rough for me to have that hit in my last semester.
Yeah, the spring was really, really hard. I think the spring was when there was just like, everyone was very sad. Having said that, in my second year, I feel very lucky. I feel very lucky to have great health insurance right now and not to be worrying about any of that or where my income is coming from. So that's been really great. I think that compared to some of the other students who are studying other things, like writing is actually not as affected in practice as, the actors who are in front of their cameras now. I can still write my plays. We can still read plays. The work itself doesn't feel so, I feel very optimistic about it, actually. We are doing various virtual productions, including like I'm going to do an animated play in the spring, which I'm like actually like super jazzed about. And that probably wouldn't have happened if, I mean, of course I would love a live production instead, but I still think that there is something cool, and there is a lot that's, I feel like I'm really outing myself as like a very glass half full type person right now, but I do think that there are certain things that are, just like, how do you take advantage of of what's going on, as opposed to feeling, just feeling like bummed out. And I do think that like I'm able to access more people. The Zoomness of everything has actually made meetings, it's made meeting people all over the country so much easier and just normal, that we're just like hopping on a Zoom call. Like, that's just part of everyone's vocabulary. So there's certain elements of it that I'm like, oh, I hope that this stays. I hope that this idea that we don't have to be centralized around certain cities, like I really hope that stays. And I feel very optimistic personally. But I do have to get COVID test every 2 weeks, because I live technically on campus, but it is free.
Nice. Amazing. Yes. All right. I'm going to go to the questions. We have one that came in early in the chat, and then I'll go to the Q&A ones. So for people who didn't do theater before high school and want to get into a dramatic writing program, how much of a resume and catalog, how much of a resume and catalog do you need before applying to grad school? Is having your work produced in college what grad schools want to see? So I guess question for all, which I also get you may or may not be able to answer since you're, not on the admissions boards, but from your experiences or your sense, anybody?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, because we kind of, yeah, I'm not on an admissions board, but at OU, we're kind of aware of sort of the applications as they come in because we're such a tight community and cohort. And the play is absolutely the most important thing. Like the written material, the play that you send in is like the number one thing that'll get you to the next stage. I will say, that being said, I think it is hard for a play maybe to get an admission if it hasn't been workshopped at all. So like if it doesn't have any developmental experience, if it's a fresh first draft that hasn't been read and been rewritten, that is tough. But at least at OU, it's not like, oh, this person has done work, or this, I hadn't had a, I mean, really had a full production before I went to grad school. That's not essential. It's just having like a really awesome writing sample.
Amazing. All right. Cool. I'm gonna go to the Q&As. Okay. A major hurdle for me is letters of recommendation. How did you navigate getting those, and how much do you think they ultimately affected your application? Who wants to take it?
I will say I personally did spend a long time developing relationships with theaters before I applied to grad school. So I called in the favors to the people that to me seemingly had the most power, like artistic directors of a theater. I don't know if that mattered, but I you know, that is one benefit to kind of you know, having a bit of a life in the community before applying. But there are plenty of people that also apply straight out of undergrad, so and get in, so at like all of these schools. So, you know, I don't know, I don't think there's like one rule.
Awesome.
I feel like your recommendations should be from people that know your work, you know, and can speak to it. Like I mean, you know, and whatever that looks like at whatever stage you are, you know. As someone who is now on the other side and works as a professor and like does recommendations for people, I just found out that like one of my students got into a medical program that I applied, that I recommended her for. So yeah, it's about somebody that, you know, really honestly knows you and knows your voice and believes in you as a potential successful, you know, part of this program. So, you know, whether they be knowledgeable, reputable, like, you know, it's good to have a balance, I think, of like somebody more academic and somebody, you know, sometimes the schools will ask you for that, but, you know, somebody that like industry adjacent and someone, you know, who also is, you know, more on your academic side of things and shows like what you know and how you work in an academic setting. But really it's like, hey, this person really knows who I am, and can speak to that honestly. So.
Yeah, I would echo that times a million. I'm actually writing a handful of recommendations now. And like, I mean, another thing is often on the form, it's like you submit the recommendation, but they also have like sections where it's like, talk about like, you know, 1 to 10, their work habits, 1 to 10, collaborative nature. And like in the past, I've had folks who I've met like twice ask me for these. And I'm like, well, I'm actually not going to be able to like answer, and like, I don't know you well enough to, I'm not going to be able to speak to any of this. They're going to see this in the letter. Like, it's not going to go well for you. Like, I'm literally just gonna have to say like, no information, no information, no information for everything that you're asking for, kind of like, you know, so yeah. Miranda, I feel like you were about to say something, but I talked over you, or no? Okay, cool. Oh my God, so many questions coming into the Q&A. Okay, from an anonymous attendee, I would love to hear what's been negative about grad school. Do any of you regret your choice in a way, or in any way, or feel like it held you back from opportunities happening outside of the school environment? Great.
I mean, I can speak to some negative experiences, but not those. You know, it was definitely a conduit for some incredible work and some incredible growth. My program going in was predominantly white, and I really struggled with that. I really struggled with the ways in which that was ignored explicitly, and was just not was a factor and non-factor at the same time. So I spent 2 years of my 2-year program really like breaking down a lot of walls that the program had not addressed, and really asking for the heads of the program to look at how they were dealing with diverse voices, asking for diverse voices, ignoring diverse voices. So yeah, I think it's very common to the experience of minorities in the programs to just have to do extra work and extra labor. And it was exhausting. You know, it's exhausting. It was really frustrating. It made me want to drop out my first year. I was like, why am I doing this? You know, for what? So yeah, I think just knowing that the legacy of these programs isn't going to change overnight, and that you know, going in with open eyes and open ears, and you know, asking for what you need. You know, I think some other of us have said, asking for what you need. If they want you and they want you to come, then they have to do different, you know, and they have to continue to do differently. So yeah, a lot of my program was trying to figure out how to shape the program around my space, needing it to be a healthier space. So.
Amazing. Great. I feel like these next two questions in the Q&A actually are kind of similar. So from Diana and from Brian, I'm going to kind of read them back to back because they're kind of similar questions. From Diana, we have, would love to get input on going to grad school in NYC versus getting an MFA outside of NYC as a launching pad for your playwriting career. Is it a disadvantage to be outside of NYC, or do you not feel that? And from Brian, kind of the same thing. Jordan, can you talk about attending a program that has some physical distance from a lot of the industry? As I decide where to apply, I often find myself weighing the importance of geography. So geography in general, New York versus non-New York. Yeah. Jordan, do you want to kick it off since it was just the second one was aimed directly at you?
Yeah. I mean, I'll say what I wanted out of a program, I think, like I said, was getting paid to write. And for my money, there's nowhere better to do that than rural Ohio. Like, there's nothing to do but write. We had a mentorship program, so they would bring out 3 industry professionals every spring to see our work and to give us feedback, which was really wonderful. I don't regret not being in New York. The one thing that I think if I were doing this all over again, I might be tempted to try harder for a program closer to LA, actually, as we talk about like the screenwriting thing. Not being outside of New York, I never felt like there are programs like the Playwrights Realm, the Sketchpad series, where I felt like I had plenty of opportunities to go to New York while I was in grad school. I didn't need to be in school there, but that's just how I feel about it.
I can say, you know, we're not in New York, we're in San Diego. It's close to LA, but it's not that close to LA. But I have to say, UCSD, if missing out on the industry connections is part of what you are worried about, like that seems like a high priority that you know, when you're figuring out what schools to go to. UCSD, I think, even though we are in San Diego, does have a really close connection to the industry. You know, the only thing is, I got accepted to my school. Naomi Izuka, who's the mentor for UCSD, she works for her students. She got me basically representation before I stepped foot on campus. And so that was great. And she does that for all of her students. Or she tries to. I will say though, like when I did get an agent, the first thing we did was figure out when I would fly out to New York and have meetings. So I didn't feel like I I was missing out on having on connecting, but I did definitely, you know, like if you feel like you're gonna need to be in New York, like that, there you go. You know what's at the top of your list, which is good.
I feel like folks unmuted themselves and then remuted. So I'm gonna keep. Yeah.
I just have one like thing to add to that. So I think it's sort of on topic. Like we're talking a lot about like, does grad school equal representation? And I'm curious about it for theater, because theater, to me, early in your career, you don't really need an agent, in my opinion, right? Like if in fact you need to do TV, then you need an agent, and then you should think about like what city you need to be in. But if you want to be a playwright and you want to write plays, then you need to write plays, period. End of statement, right? Because theater agents can't do much for you until you have a body of work, and they can't do much for you for the next couple of years. Love you so much. So like they are all moving towards TV. So if in fact you want to work in the theater and that is your bread and butter, then it's making work, you know, and it's creating and collaborating and focusing on how do I work? What do I work? What does my voice? Applying for a crap ton of fellowships and, you know, theater residencies. Because frankly, agents can't do much for you until you have done your work. You know, agents can get you into TV. They cannot get you into the theater because it's just not how it works. So I think nobody tells you that. They're like, we need an agent. No, you don't. You don't. You definitely do not. You need fellowships. You need theater contacts. You need to know lit managers. You can do that from anywhere. So
that times 10,000. Yes. Okay. So many questions coming through. Okay. From an anonymous attendee, I live in NYC. My concern is getting into debt. Are there fully funded programs that I should know about? Or how do I find out about funding? And when is a good time to start searching for funding?
All right, I'm just going to jump in.
Everybody on this is a fully funded program, right?
Go.
Yale is fully funded. I only applied to programs that were fully funded, and I have no idea what everybody's situations are now, but at the time that I was applying, I applied to Brown and to Yale because I knew that they were fully funded, and my family is on the East Coast, and I was tired of being on a different coast from my family, so I only looked at schools on the East Coast, and those are the schools I applied to.
Does anybody know, like, is there a site or a place where it's like, here are all the fully, like, I know Yale is, Brown, I think UCSD is, UT.
They don't advertise it. I feel like it's something that I had to, like, learn through the grapevine.
Agreed. As far as I know, Brooklyn College, the first year is paid for, and you have to find funding or fund it yourself the second year. It's very affordable. I would say it's probably one of the more affordable programs of all of them. It's a state school. So that was a big draw, huge draw. And there's an organization for women identified playwrights that are changing careers called AAUW. I can find the website and put it in the chat. And it's the American Association of University Women. So, right, it's not explicitly for playwrights, but you can use it. And I got a grant from them to fund my second year. So the question of when you find funding is immediately, as soon as you can, ask around. I'm sure there are other things, but AAUW was really great. It was between $9,000 and $12,000, which is really good. And then I also asked the school. I said, hey, I'm a diverse voice and I need help. And they helped me find money. So, don't be afraid to use your voice, ask for help. And, really look at your budget, really look at working as an artist. One of the things that somebody said to me, a director when I was applying to acting grad school was like, don't go into debt, just don't do it. And I think that's the most important thing we can say on this call today. I'm going to say it one more time. Don't go into debt. Find another way, do something else. Keiko, don't go into debt. Jordan, don't go into debt. Don't do it. It is not worth it. It is not worth it. Your life, the thing that came up for me is I was going to go to the new school, right, for acting. And I was like, I cannot afford this. And Susie Orman came on the TV like a little goddess. And she said, well, if you go, like we're going into recession or something of this nature. And she was like, college debt is going to be really dangerous for you. And I pulled my application. I got in, I had given them a deposit. I don't think I got the deposit back. And I did not go to the new school for that very reason. You cannot live in your college degree. You cannot, if you go into debt and cannot pay it, then you will eventually get into debt that you cannot, it can screw up your credit score. It's really dangerous, especially right now. So think about the next 5 to 10 years of your life and what your investment is really worth.
Yes to all of that. And I'm seeing another question later in the chat that sort of ties into what we're saying. So I'm just going to tack this onto this. So there's a question around fully funded programs, but also, can you please share details around the stipends, housing, benefits received? And if the answer is I don't remember, that's also fine.
I'm gonna give you my specific numbers because I truly feel like everything should be transparent. I either teach one class and do random administrative work, or I teach 2 classes. For that, I receive before taxes about $2,400. My rent on campus is my husband and I have a 2-bedroom, and that is $1,300. So that's very cheap. If you don't get housing, then you're a little bit more in a tricky situation. But it's doable at our school. I truly believe our health insurance is free. So true, what you're paying for, I don't know what the other schools are. I just always want to give very specific numbers when people are looking at UCSD, so they know exactly what they're getting into. Oh, and studios are, I think, $900 at UCSD a month.
Amazing. Cool. Okay. Oh, yeah, Miranda, go for it.
I can't remember what our finances broke down to at Yale, but I felt like in New Haven I could live like a king, because it's possible to live frugally here and not feel out of place. I actually am now back in the apartment that I lived in grad school when we had to leave Brooklyn a month or 2 ago because it got to be too expensive. We were able to come back to New Haven, and that was a big relief. But I would say that unless you are a supernova or you get a huge break in television immediately, I would also take a look at some of the resources about what working playwrights and directors make, because it's going to be a tough couple of years. And one thing I think that they don't really talk a lot about in the grad programs is just know what else you can do to make money, whether that's tutoring or teaching, or I worked at yoga studios, I babysat, I dog walked, just know what you're able to do, which can be demoralizing at times. You've just gotten your MFA and I'm cleaning toilets at a yoga studio, but just be as you cultivate your writing, also just continue to be realistic about the other ways that you're able to make money for when you graduate from your programs.
Great. Question from Andrea. Many of you applied more than once to grad school. What was it that made you get in when you did get in? I'm not sure any of you would actually know the answer to that. Does anybody?
I was just typing in the chat. Can we type to them, or does that change the thing?
I think it makes it then vanish from me. So okay. I'm trying to make it so because not everybody can see in the Q&A. Jordan.
Oh, I was just gonna say I do think it's my play getting better. Like I just wrote new plays and revised plays and workshopped the hell out of them. And so I think my work got better. I usually reuse letters of recommendation to go back to an earlier question. So I think it was the work.
Amazing. Cool. Another question. I'm trying to plow through these. There's such great questions in here. When did you know you were ready to start applying for grad school? How long did you wait after undergrad? What did you do in between? I think you guys touched a little bit about what you did in between, but maybe not exactly how much time or what made you say, now is the moment.
I spent so much time that when they asked for undergraduate degree thing, like information from that, it felt like so long ago that I didn't even know how to find it. Like it was I had lived a whole life after undergrad, quite a few years. And in that time, I worked as an actor, but I also had like side jobs. I worked in an office. But most of all, I developed relationships and started to get to know myself as a writer. And I think that's just, I just got to know myself.
Amazing. Jordan, go for it.
Yeah, I will say, I think the people who I know that have really thrived in programs are people who had a sense of really what they want to write, like already had a sense of their sort of artistic vision for themselves before going, and weren't just going because it was like the next step after undergrad. I'm sure that works for some people, but I think taking some time to live in the world. I took 6 years in between undergrad and grad. I recommend that highly, to take a couple of years in between to figure out what it is you want to write, because this is the time to do it and you're never going to get this time again. So it's better to wait until you know what it is you want to use the time for.
It took me a long time. Like I graduated in 2006. It took me like 12 years. So, I wouldn't, I really think that like life experience helps. There's another question that came up about older applicants. Two of the other the cohort that came in after me were on the older side. One was in her 40s, another one was in her late 50s, and they explicitly were looking to expand the age gap. So the woman that was older, she was a novelist that was transitioning to playwriting. So it was really cool to have her in the room. I read her novel. She had many lives. So, there is no right time other than, you need the space. You have been developing yourself. I don't think that graduate school is the answer for you becoming a playwright. Like you become a playwright and then grad school facilitates you to like a wider version of yourself. So and everyone's sort of like nodding on this one. So coming in with as much of an idea of what you want to learn and an idea of what you're like, I want to paint on this kind of canvas, like I want to, I really would examine who is at these programs. Like all of our programs are very, very different. Like, people that come out of my program are Annie Baker, like, and kind of like Young Jean Lee, Tanya Everett. You don't know her yet, but you will. So, just like strange, mystical, like plays that happen in odd spaces. Mac Wellman is a weirdo. So, I'm not writing the same plays that Miranda's writing. And I didn't come through the program that way. Also, I wanted much more of a structural program that Brooklyn didn't have, because that's not how Brooklyn works, right? They want you to be the playwright that you want to be. That is very specific to my program. Like, they are not coming in and saying, this is the 3-act structure. This is how you write a play. So examine who goes to these programs and what kinds of plays they write, so that your voice is a complement to that program. Yeah.
Amazing. And to kind of piggyback off of the question in the chat from anonymous attendee who is on the older side, 38, curious, Keiko, about your insight into being older than the folks in your program and how that's felt for you.
You don't realize until you're with people who are like 12 years younger than you that you know how much age comes up in conversation all the time, or like, do you remember this? But other than those little things that just like make you, I honestly feel because I got to work in the world, and in the theater world a little bit before coming here, I just feel like I have a stronger sense of how to use my time a little bit more wisely. And I feel like I know exactly what I want to get out of school, rather than just like kind of trying it out. So yeah, that's all I can say.
Amazing. Great. All right, going through these. Sort of touched on this, but I think we can quickly touch again. How did your programs train you in the realm of screenwriting / TV, if at all? Also, were you able to gain connections in that world? This is a question from Eric. Everybody's shaking their heads.
We had like a 6-week, I don't know what they're doing at Yale right now, but we had like a 6-week course on TV, and we like wrote a group pilot that none of us could ever use for sample. And it was like, we just all laughed about it. I think that it set me up. I'm trying to get into TV now, and I feel like the way that it has set me up is mostly through relationships with playwrights who have tried to get into TV, but we were not trained in the world of TV in any. It's probably different now that Terrell runs the program, because he is like in the world of film and TV. But that is just a guess.
I'm gonna jump in. I think UCSD, I don't know what it used to be like. I think it has a really strong TV film element right now. We have a guy named Mike Finch that comes. He's like quite amazing, I think. And last year he came and taught us TV for 2 quarters. We kind of developed, some of us wrote pilots. A lot of people, just the ones that are graduating, just worked on pitches. This year we're going to work on screenwriting, and then we'll do TV again next year. And yeah, I mean, but also like that's a huge part of our school. And again, if you're not interested in that, like this might not be the right school, because like we'll say like you have to spend quite a lot of time writing a movie instead of writing a play. And so if you're trying to get plays out, like might not be the right place. But
And sorry, real quick, I just want to say OU is like kind of a choose your own adventure type of program. It's really based on what classes you want to take. So I actually chose, they just invested a bunch of money into their VR program. So I actually was taking some VR courses. And so I have some like short VR videos and binaural audio projects that came out of that. But that was something that I decided to do outside of the program and not built in. And in terms of connections, no, not really, not at all. But I have some cool samples from it. So, you know.
I touched on it. I asked for help with it because it's what I wanted from the program, and they were so sweet about it. And I was able to like spend an entire semester working on a pilot that also could not be used as a sample. So like it was real adorbs. And anecdotally, Erin, Courtney, and I ended up in a TV writing course together this last year. So like I took a course with the head of my program because she's represented by WME and, you know, generously submitted my stuff to them, but also just did not have that skill set really, you know, that's just not, she's a playwright, like very much like a weirdo, awesome, like magician playwright. So it's knowing what the program can offer you, but also not being afraid to ask for it, you know, because I don't know, it was really cool to be taking this course with her after, you know, and now she and I are more peers in that way. So now I like, you know, we sort of bat information back and forth and are learning together. I also think that the one thing that maybe I haven't said is that the play that I wrote for my last year is the play that's getting me submitted to all these, and it's what the fellowship that I did with Playwrights Realm is, you know, so they are looking for playwrights that can transition to TV writing. So it's a weird thing. Like they are looking for voices that are distinct, that may not be from a pilot, but eventually you're going to need a strong sample or a couple of samples. So don't be afraid to like just develop your voice because it can be a conduit. It was for me. And eventually you have to learn the craft of screenwriting, you know. So there's a lot of different ways in. I know a lot of people that have not had to write a pilot sample and just got hired. But I think it's becoming more and more competitive because there's a shit ton of playwrights who also can write the hell out of TV. So
amazing. Great. Great. We have a few questions around the interview process in application land and what that was like. Anyone?
The interview process for grad school, is that?
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't find it. You depending on the school, usually I think the only interesting thing to note, you know, like the interview itself is like they're probably just going to talk to you about your play for a long time, and if there's like a cool head of that program, then you get to talk with like a cool playwright for a long time about your work, which is like kind of incredible. And the only other thing to know is that if you get past the first round, a lot of most of these schools do callbacks, so you do go in person to meet. They'll fly playwrights out, or now they're probably just going to do Zoom things this year, but you do get to like meet other students and meet the faculty and see the campus and stuff, which I think is really helpful. I don't know what's interesting about interviews other than
UCSD's fancy. They don't do that. Oh gosh. you interview there's no interview process as far as I know. There's like, they read your sample, they read your statement, and then if they're interviewing you, they're probably like, I feel like maybe if you're waitlisted, but otherwise you're just offered an app, like, you know, so that's not a part of the application process, or at least it wasn't for me. So.
Great. This is an easy one. From Adrian, do your programs leave time to have a job outside of school?
Mine does also.
It's Brooklyn College.
So 50-50, it depends on the school.
Yeah, Brooklyn College is explicitly like bred for that. So they have like mostly evening classes, and you take electives, you know, so you have a workshop. Both years are in the workshop together, and that's on Tuesday night, typically, or a night, right? And that's like 3 to 4 hours, depending on how they run it. And then you have a couple of electives that you have to take and you have to write. So it's very feasible to have a job. That being said, the more time consuming your job, the less you're writing. So, you know, I would say I felt stressed at times trying to juggle. And I did teach my second year, which was a lot, because grading and writing, you know, and hustling, like, so know your bandwidth. and what you want to get out of the program. In an ideal world, you're not working a full-time job and trying to go to grad school, but lots of us work.
Great. I mean, I feel like that sort of answers, although I'll let, if anybody else wants to weigh in on this, like another question in the chat that kind of is piggybacking on what Tanya was just saying. For all the playwrights, how have you navigated that tricky balance between your academic, career, and personal lives?
We all had to do work study as a part of our program. So all of the students at the School of Drama are the ushers and the lighting technicians and the front of house staff. And that was a huge part of the curriculum. And that's like how all of the productions happen. So when you're not writing, you are, I sold a lot of concessions at Yale Rep. And it's actually, I don't know how all of this is transitioning in a year with no productions, but it's a pretty intensive part of the program. And we actually had to submit absence request forms if we wanted to leave New Haven, because we are expected to be on call for our work study opportunities. So sometimes actually that got tricky if playwrights had opportunities off campus and were assigned to, a 6-week work study that they had to fulfill. Yeah, that might be unique to us. Oh, and you also can find a way to have some personal time. I had a church community. I had a yoga community. It's important to me to have a life wherever I live.
So many great questions, and I feel like we have room for a couple more. So I'm going to keep going. Do you feel like your programs had a house style? If so, how do you feel? If so, did you know that beforehand? And how did you feel like that informed your work while you were there?
Can you define, what does house style mean?
This is from an anonymous attendee. Whoever typed that, do you want to put something in the chat or let Chelsea know, and then she can let me know and I can...
Is it kind of what Tanya's talking about like Brooklyn having more experimental? And
that's how I'm kind of interpreting it. So let's go with that interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, I can hop in. OU, Charles Smith, who was there the whole time I was there, he's now gone, but he is all about structure, and I think that's still there. Like, your first semester, you're writing short plays, but you're not really working on a full length, because they're basically sort of teaching you how to read and analyze plays and break them down and look at their structure and look at what structure works. And so if you're a playwright who hates thinking about structure and hates talking about structure, like, that program is not right for you at all. So that's how I would sort of define the OU house style.
Awesome.
Yeah, I don't think we have one. We have a real revolving door of teachers who come in, so you get to study with people who have really different aesthetics. Like, I got to study with Sarah Rule and Jackie Solis-Drury, who have like totally different philosophies and takes on how to write and what makes a play, and yeah.
Okay, I think I'm going to ask two more. One that is a pretty easy one, I think. When you were applying multiple times, did you sometimes use the same play twice with updates? I'm seeing two heads shaking.
Submitted new plays.
I feel like I saw two heads shaking and two heads nodding.
I submitted two different plays. Yeah, I submitted multiple different plays. Like, I think if you submit the same play, they've read it. So I don't know why you would get in from the same submission. Like, your goal is to share your voice, and if they didn't vibe with the play that you sent in, I would say, what else do you have?
I waited until I had a play that I thought was really, really strong and applied with that. And so I applied. I was a first timer.
Amazing. And I'm looking through these. I might answer some of these things directly. Yeah, Miranda.
I just realized that there's something that I think not enough people broadcast about the Yale School of Drama, which is that you do not need to have an undergraduate degree in order to go to the School of Drama. You won't graduate with an official MFA. I think you graduate with like a certificate or something, but you don't need to have an undergraduate degree. And in your bio, you can just say that you went to the Yale School of Drama. You know, it doesn't matter.
I feel like this is a good one. Yeah. How big of a corpus of plays do you need in order to apply to a playwriting MFA program? What constitutes a writing sample? If you already have a few plays you're proud of, would that be enough to apply with? Or are programs looking for more works under your belt? Question from Marina.
Yeah, I think the most that any program asks for is 2. If there might be one that's more than that, but yeah, if you have 2 that you're proud of, as long as you meet the minimum requirements, send those plays and you're fine. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Can I do 2 more questions? I'm trying to get through a couple of these. Great. Thank you guys. Let's go for, I'm interested in learning more about the statement of purpose component of applications and how you approach writing them. I think that's something that might be very useful to folks as they're thinking about things.
That's a whole semester, friends. Statement writing is so specific. The couple things that I can sort of boil down, I took a really good class with Roberta Pereira. No, that's wrong. What is her name? Roberta Pereira is Players from.
That's our producing director, who is amazing.
Artistic director of Rattlestick. Why? What is my brain? Where's my brain?
Oh,
right
Daniela Topol.
Daniela. Oh, Jesus. Okay, because Roberta was on my mind from earlier this morning. I took my headshots this morning with Daniel from Players from. So my brain is like all over the place. So that's why the makeup. I don't look like this all the time. So Daniela Topol really like with any statement, not just statements for grad school. And there's a really good article that Young Jean Lee wrote about, so just Google statements and Young Jean Lee, I don't know if I can find it. Finding your original voice in your statement, making sure that to cater it to the program. So UCSD, Brooklyn College, each of these programs are very, very different. Why do you want to go to that school? And why is your voice right for that school? And who are you? Like, because they read hundreds of these, like thousands of them, depending on what program you're applying to, given all these other programs that we may be applying to. So really specifically, what do you bring to the table? What do you want to do in theater? And why now for you? Like, why in this moment in a pandemic do you need a theater degree? Like, and what can you contribute?
And I don't know if this is still the practice, but for many years for us, they read the plays before they read anybody's statements. So you read the plays, they decide what plays they like, and then they read the rest of the application. So put most of your effort into your play and then follow up with your resume and your statement.
Amazing. And the last question, could any of you speak to your experience teaching in your programs? Is it required? Do you form your own class structure, etc.? This is from an anonymous attendee.
We teach at UCSD. My first class ever that I had at UCSD was a class that I taught, which I think is bonkers. But but we do get to teach every quarter. You cannot teach if you have something else. Like Dave Harris had something, he had to like keep leaving because he's a hotshot, and so he like literally couldn't teach. And one of our third year, Vivian, she's like working on something outside of school, so they're letting her not teach. But other than that, yeah, we teach not necessarily theater students either, and like that's actually the best part, is like teaching engineers how to write a play. So it's awesome.
Yeah, at OU, it's part of your stipend is, it's usually to teach, or there might be something kind of like equivalent amount of hours, but just, I wanted to say the first class I taught 175 students, and had to grade 9 papers that they wrote a semester all by myself. So, you know, it's a lot of work to teach at OU, and it's built into the program. And no, I didn't really get to, I was the teacher, so I could kind of adjust the syllabus a little bit, but mostly it was like, here's the template of what you're doing. You can make some small adjustments, but there are certain requirements for this particular class. So yeah, it varied, 14 students, 175. Mileage may vary. Yeah.
That is, wow, that is everything. That is a lot. That is everything. Thank you for hanging out a little after. I'm gonna try to respond to some of these chats, but I think we got through a lot of the questions. So thank you everybody who tuned in. As I think you know, like we are doing community classes and conversations and things on Zoom all through the season here at the Realm. So, if you're interested in keeping up with what we're doing, you can check that out. Thank you, Chelsea. I see you highlighting it there on our website there. And also, we would love to get a sense of how you enjoyed this panel, if there are other conversations that you would be interested in having. So I think Chelsea is also going to drop a link to just like a feedback form for all of our wonderful attendees. Can fill it out now, or we will also be following it up with you with that for email later, over email later. But thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Miranda. Thank you, Keiko. Thank you, Chelsea, for helping run this whole thing. Yeah, this is a great conversation, and have great evenings. Happy Friday. Thank you all. Oh my God.